Hey everyone, my name is Kevin, and I'm here to dive into an analysis of The Last of Us Episode 6. I recommend that you've watched the episode beforehand because this will have spoilers, but let's get right into it. So, The Last of Us Episode 6 is about a paradox, and that is how Ellie will feel more scared without Joel, but Joel is more scared when Ellie is with him. They each have their methods to make up for this, but it's clear that they're going to have to grow together by the end of the episode, and ultimately this paradox leads to them having this big confrontation later on. I like to think of their fears as sort of a sinking ship as we approach this climax, and how they deal with them comes across in different ways. Ellie, at the beginning of the episode, takes over for Joel on watch, which to me shows that she's trying to prove that she can take care of herself, but at the end of the day, she still doesn't really believe it. To some extent, she might be noticing some of Joel's distance and trying to comfort him with her own skills, but she's still in that spot of being afraid of ending up alone. Joel also begins to feel more pressure throughout this episode. We can see that he is having panic attacks and problems with his heart, and one of these situations is when Ellie is getting sniffed by the dog. You can tell on his face that every fiber in his body wants to turn around and make sure that she's going to be okay, but he just can't do it. Luckily, they make it through that situation, and then they end up in Jackson, where we see Tommy and Joel unite for the first time. Ellie, in this situation, could be happy for them, but instead we see that her mind is kind of wandering off to different places, and you can see that as she's looking at them together, she's most likely wondering, is this the end of the road for her and Joel? Ellie tries to hold on to Joel throughout this episode, and one of the ways in which she does that is by defending him. She defends him from disdain, which is pretty obvious coming from Maria, and at the same time, she also sees Joel as her father figure, and she sees him as a good man and her fearless protector, but in some ways, Joel doesn't really see himself this way. Instead, taken over by thoughts of losing Ellie, Joel tries to push her away more, and he lays it out on the table with Tommy. He says, "You think I can still handle things? I'm not the man I was. I'm weak." Joel may not really see his emotions as a weakness anymore, but it's more so the things that are coming with that. He is unable to help Ellie out because he's so afraid of losing her. But at the same time, he's also being really hard on himself in this situation, and he's not seeing any of the successes. "All I've ever done is fail her," he says. He feels like he can't screw up. His life is framed through the loss of Sarah and Tess, who he failed to protect. It's near impossible for him to imagine going through that again with Ellie. To Joel, Ellie is a capable individual, even if he doesn't really want to admit that. Maybe even more capable than himself. But Ellie doesn't really see it that way. They each have this sort of distorted picture of one another, which leads to their confrontation at the climax of this episode. "Do you give a shit about me or not?" Ellie says as she smashes the diary down. Joel responds with, "Of course I do." "Then what are you so afraid of?" Ellie asks bluntly. Ellie here needs Joel to admit that he is afraid of losing her. She needs him to admit that he cares, because then he can't leave. As she doesn't really get what she wants in this situation, she pushes harder, and after learning about Sarah with Maria, she knows exactly how to do that. "I'm not her, you know," she says, and you can just see Joel's face over the next seconds to come just melts down into frustration and anger. Even though Ellie says this, in a way, she knows that she is Joel's daughter. She knows that that is why he is worried. She's defended him, she looks up to him, but she needs this in return, and she needs to know that he's not going to abandon her. They're sort of at their breaking point here, and so Ellie pushes Joel to his limit. "You're right, you're not my daughter," he says, "and I sure as hell ain't your dad." Joel's trying this as one last-ditch effort to sever their bond. He cares about her so much that he will never be good enough to take care of her. The only solution is for him to burn it all down and not risk what he's already lost again. After that, Joel spends the evening thinking about Sarah. He knows he lied to Ellie. He knows she is now basically his daughter, and that it's time to let Sarah go. Ellie is his future and potentially the world's future, and he realizes that it's more important for her to feel and be safe. When he's out in the stables, he says that Ellie deserves the choice, knowing full well that she's just going to choose him, which he does super abruptly. At this point, it's basically comedic how he's trying to stay detached, and it's obvious there's no turning back now. I think it's interesting that this episode is called Kin, and we end this episode feeling, for the first time, like for real, that these two are a daughter and a father. As they're finally together at the end of the episode, Joel reveals his desire to be a singer. Ellie rests her head on his shoulder, but then Joel gets stabbed. Our next episode is set up for a whirlwind of possibilities. Ellie is now going to have to face what it's like to be on her own, and if Joel happens to wake up, he's going to have what is probably going to feel like another failure again, and so he has to continue to face this problem, but Ellie also has to fulfill sort of her end of the paradox here and facing what it's like to not have Joel at her side fully. I can't wait to see what is next, but also I want to say bonus points because they put some really good music from the game in this, so that made me really happy. But yeah, if you enjoyed this, please check back next week for my analysis of episode 7, and yeah, like, subscribe, share it around. I don't care. Do what you want. Thank you for watching.